Thanks for staying tuned. Joining us from River State, Port Harcourt this afternoon is Stanley Ajalaja, who is a film producer and director in the Nollywood space. And of course, we'll be looking at the evolution of film in Africa. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us, Mr. Ajalaja.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Happy Independence Day from Nigeria, of course. So let's look into the evolution and all the revolution that we've seen the world experience in terms of African films. For a very long time, the conversation was about the fact that the West tried to portray Africa in a certain light. Over the course of all of these years, would you say that Africa and African films have evolved properly to tell its own stories?
We can't say that we are where we want to be as African filmmakers and as for us African films, but we can sure say that we are really, really close and we are doing really good.
Okay. What's your rating for recognition of African films, at the global space? What's the recognition like? We've continued to see a lot of works coming out of Africa. Would you say that we are now properly and well recognized globally?
We are. We are well recognized. We have a position in the world when it comes to movies. And I mean, you can talk about Africa and not talk about our movies. As a matter of fact, we have been able to recently export our movies across the continent. So, I mean, we are well recognized, I must say.
Okay, so one of the questions that usually begs the minds of Nigerians, it's in the trajectory of our filming and our storylines. So most often than not, an average Nollywood movie, for instance, is curated to tell the love story. Nigerians are wondering, Africans are wondering, can't we tell other, stories, science fictions, all of the action movie related? Can't we have that evolution affect, African film, as it were, especially Nollywood? Mr. Jalaja, can you hear me? Seems to have been frozen for a while, but we see the fact that African film production has grown rapidly in recent years. Now, the case of Nollywood is the most emblematic one for most of the continent. We see the sector's economic potential remain largely untapped also, and these are things that we hope to be able to talk to Ajalaja about. Now we can see certain things contributing to the untapped potential of the African film space, which will also include infrastructure, a socio-political climate, and an unstable economic situation. Now, if we also would look at certain ratings with regards to African films, we will see UNESCO's rating saying that African movies and the continent most poorly served in terms of cinemas. Now, the production and distribution of film also and audiovisual works is one of the most dynamic growth sectors in the world. In the current state of things, we have seen how digital technologies and production has been growing rapidly in Africa and affecting staple state production of films. Now, we can also talk about the case of Nollywood with about 2,500 films made each year, which is a strong emblem for African movies in the global space. This has also enabled the emergence of a local industry of production and distribution with its own economic model. Mr. Jalaja, can we know if you can hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things we are also talking about this evening is infrastructure and funding. How is it affecting the growth of, movies, films, and cinema on the continent?
Yeah, like I said, we're not where we want to be as filmmakers, but it's gradually getting to that spot because for actors, it's a good time to be an actor. For every filmmaker in Nigeria, especially, it's a good time to be a filmmaker. because people now understand that our stories are really changing lives and touching lives to say. But we cannot overemphasize the part of infrastructure and funding, which is also gaining attention because the more people like your platform talk about things like this, people get to be aware and know the right directions to embark on when it has to do with how to get fund for movies and infrastructures generally. So I would say not where we want to be, but not where we used to be. So it's getting if you know the do's and don'ts, and you are really informed on filmmaking. Trust me, getting funds to make movies right now in Nigeria is not much of a problem.
Oh wow, that's great news. But looking at how African movie industry is telling the African story, would you say that we're also evolving in storytelling? Just before, we lost you for a moment. We're talking about diversifying in our storytelling, just about love and other related issues. Can we move to
Yeah.
developmental storytelling for the continent and for the globe?
Okay, I'll say this here, and I'll take the bullet for it. The thing is, we have rich stories embedded in our culture that some filmmakers would like to tell. But again, we don't have a structure where the government pays total attention to the Nollywood industry. So most times when these people make films, you see that we have more of independent filmmakers, producers to say. And now when we make films, we also have to sell these movies to stay in business. Now, the platforms that we make these movies for also have the kind of movies that make sales on their platforms. Now, that's why you see like the YouTube, like most of our movies have been stereotyped like, oh, it's just love, love, love that we talk about. No, it's just that some of the things that we could tell as a story as Africans, those platforms cannot accommodate them because we are black people, we have voodoo, we have culture, and some of the things, if we want to tell our stories in that direction, can be graphic and sometimes maybe too hard for platforms like that generally all ages can access. So that's why, and again, because some people, when they spend so much money making this spend so much money making this film, these films cannot access some platforms because of the I don't want to go, maybe we'll talk about that next time, but because all platforms have their rudiments, and these are to make good films, but do not have the right platform to get those films across to the world for them. Other times, some people they want to tell good stories, but they tell them shabbily that they are not good enough for those platforms. So basically, I think that's like the constraint that the industry has. But for places like, if you're following up on platforms like Netflix and I mean Africans, Nigerians, I would like to say, because I'm a Nigerian, I'm speaking for Nigerians. You see that we're having good, great movies out there right now. Our culture is out there right now. As a matter of fact, I was in Lagos. I'm here in Port Harcourt to make another film.
So my question then will be, why don't we come together as a continent to create our own platforms to make and sell our own stories? If you are bounded by the rudiments of Netflix and Prime movies and the likes, why doesn't Africa innovate its own platform to tell and sell its stories?
That's a beautiful question, I must say. It's just like asking, right? It's just like asking why we're Christians. Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
Are you a Christian?
Yes, I am.
Okay, it's more like saying, why don't we just all attend the same church? Why do we have a lot of churches? You get it right there. It's I don't know why it's difficult for black people to just put hands together, have that synergy, and do one thing and do it greatly. So I think our ecosystem is, in some way, speaking for myself, I mean, from my point of view, our ecosystems in some way affect the way we put things together. So I think it's, I also have that prayer at heart that we could come together as black people and have a platform that will serve black people. Just like China is independent now, with or without Netflix, they will do well. So I mean, we could have that platform, and but for the now, for the sake of your time and your question, it's still in focus and it's a prayer point.
Okay, so we just have to wrap up the show now, but I'm going to ask, in terms of Nigeria at 64, we're celebrating the Giants of Africa today, so it's a big story to tell. Would you say that Nollywood has, invested heavily into the picture that the rest of the world now sees Nigeria through?
If I am going to put all other sentences in my pocket, my answer will be yes.
All right. It's been a great conversation with you, although very short, Stanley Ajalaja. Thank you for your time. And we do hope that we
Thank
can elaborate on these kinds of conversations some other time.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. It's been a great conversation this afternoon on Spotlight Africa, starting to look into developmental strides across different sectors. But that's the much we can take today. We'll do this again some other time. Thanks for being a part of Spotlight Africa. I am Uyai MM. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye for now.